Good afternoon, colleagues, and good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to this first of 3 webinars that we'll be convening in collaboration with UNESCO Kingston and the Caricom Secretariat. Today's webinar session is entitled Education, Locking the Potential of Every Child. I am Dr. Laura Bristol, Program Manager, Human Resource Development here at the Caricom Secretariat. Just to follow our agenda for today's session, I want to just give you a brief overview of digital skills. And when we think about digital skills, we refer to a range of abilities that enable individuals to use digital devices, communication applications, and networks to access and manage information. These skills allow people to create and share digital content, communicate and collaborate effectively, and solve problems for self-fulfillment in various aspects of their lives, learning, working, and social activity. Entry-level digital skills are the functional skills necessary to make basic use of digital devices and online applications. They are widely recognized as a critical component of the new set of literacy skills in the digital era, complementing traditional reading, writing, and numeracy skills. As we enter and engage in this conversation, it is important for me to take time to acknowledge the members of our Digital Skills Task Force, the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force, and I would want to pay a particular acknowledgement to Dr. Barbara Reynolds and Mr. Carlton Samuels, who are serving as our co-chairs for the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force, which was established to assess the digital skills in the region. The mandate of that task force was given by the Council for Human and Social Development Education at its 25th meeting in November 2020. So when we think about the advanced spectrum of digital skills users possess, higher level abilities that empower them to leverage digital technologies in transformative ways, including professions in information and communication technology. Major digital transformations such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data analytics have changed the requirements of digital skills and impacted capacity building and skills development in the 21st century. So today's session, as we engage, is focused, as I said, on the theme of leveraging digital skills for Caribbean prosperity. These series of 3 webinars aims to explore how digital skills can be utilized to drive sustainable economic growth, social development, and overall prosperity in the Caribbean region. We have a fantastic lineup of persons and personalities from across the globe to share information with you, to stimulate this conversation that we are having. So as we begin and we jump right in to this session, I would want to hand over to my colleague, Paul Hector, who will introduce our first speaker. Thank you. Paul, over to you.
Good morning, Dr. Bristol, and good morning to all participants here on today's session. Our first speaker is Dr. Sanjaya Mishra, and I've had the pleasure of working with Sanjaya several years ago, and he is joining us in his capacity as the Director of Education from the Commonwealth of Learning. Sanjaya is one of the leading scholars in the area of open, distance, and opening and online learning. He has extensive experience in teaching, staff development, research, policy development, innovation, and of course, organizational development. He is a recipient of numerous awards, including the ISTD Vivican National Award for Excellence in Human Resource Development and Training. He has written extensively, written and edited over 300 publications in the forms of books, chapters, peer-reviewed journal papers, conference presentations. And it's really an honor and a pleasure to have you with us today, Dr. Sanjaya Mishra. And without any further ado, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Paul. Let me first share my presentation and do the talking today. I hope this full screen is visible to everyone. Can anybody just let me know? It's everything okay?
We're seeing it full screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. At the outset, I must thank UNESCO Kingston and the Caricom office to have invited me to speak today on this very important topic. My congratulations to the organizers for thinking of such a series of webinar. And the first topic is really interesting and very close to my heart. And I have tried to put together a set of slides, not necessarily the way Paul talked about things in general to provide a worldview, but I am trying to talk about the key things that are needed now, and what are the things that are happening in the Caribbean that I know of a little bit from my experience from the Commonwealth of Learning. I'm trying to present those aspects, and I will be happy to respond to questions, comments afterwards. And therefore, I would like to make it on time and quick to go through the presentation at this beginning. Those of you who are not aware of my organization, Commonwealth of Learning, I know the colleagues from Caricom and UNESCO knows very well, but for the audience, the Commonwealth of Learning was established in 1987 as an intergovernmental organization, and our job is to help Commonwealth governments and institutions use technologies to improve and expand access to quality education and training. In the Caribbean, we work in 12 countries, and that includes, of course, Jamaica and other countries. Our main focus is on learning for sustainable development, which we believe is economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental conservation, all through the progress of education and training in the Commonwealth countries. My today's plan is to provide you a digital age context, especially in the Caribbean, talk about the digital education a little bit to expand that based on our work that we have been doing with UNESCO, and to present few key points that are necessary to make digital education work for everyone. So what are the digital age context? So if you look at the picture of internet access per 100 population in some of the countries in the Caribbean, you will see a diversity, but still you will see a majority of the countries have reasonably good internet access. And that's a plus point for the countries in the Caribbean in terms of digital education. Only Guyana and Grenada, Belize probably falls less in this list of the Commonwealth countries that I have identified. But you can contextualize to your own situation what is the percentage of internet access in your own country. But broadly, the Caribbean has good internet connection in comparison to the world in average. The mobile subscription per 100 population also looks bright, and in many countries, it's people have more than one mobile subscription, more than one phone, mostly smartphones availability, and that's very good. And both the things leads us to think that digital education is the most possible way of looking at things in the Caribbean. A study from the World Bank talked about the investment in education can fuel Caribbean's growth. So there is a wider recognition that education is key for the growth in the Caribbean. During the pandemic, the Commonwealth Learning collaborated with Coursera and started offering a workforce recovery program, helping several people skill and reskill. And this program has scaled up in many countries in the Caribbean, and the governments have adopted that and directly have started offering those skills program. And this included a huge chunk of digital education related program or digital skills related program. And more importantly, this was online program. So the success of this workforce recovery program in the Caribbean is an example of how digital education is being taken up by the citizens in the Caribbean countries currently. We also offered several massive open online courses for teachers around the Commonwealth, but also particularly for targeting country-specific things. And one such was with the Trinidad and Tobago. And almost 50% of the teachers in that country attended this MOOC. That's also a significant possible due to internet access available to teachers. If you look at ICT in education policies available in the Commonwealth countries of the Caribbean, Antigua, Barbuda, Belize, St. Lucia do have ICT in education policy, and these policies also talk of open educational resources policies. So there might be many other I might have left, but I have worked with these three countries to and either implement their ICT in education policy or to have developed their policies as such. So I'm just highlighting the availability of ICT in education policy is a key driver to digital education in the Caribbean countries. The Commonwealth of Learning has developed a platform called Commonwealth Digital Education Leadership Training in Action. And this is implemented in these three countries, Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, and St. Lucia. And large number of teachers and students from these countries have undergone training on the Sea Delta platform and have acquired necessary skills in digital education. Overall, the trends in the Caribbean looks like there are high internet and mobile penetration, which is creating new opportunities for online and blended learning. There is an increased acceptance of online learning after the COVID-19 pandemic. There are a large number of free on open courses available, including the Commonwealth of Learning's Digital Education Leadership Training course. There is a huge need for skilling and reskilling of the youths in the Caribbean, and policy development for ICT in education needed in many more countries to build resilience of the education systems. There are also key challenges, particularly internet connectivity at schools. Even though internet access for more people are there, particularly schools may not have high bandwidth internet connections. Many a time these internet availability in these schools are only for the administration purposes and not for teaching and learning. There are also issues about connectivity at home question. The cost of internet access are also very high, and teacher training is questioned, but some of those efforts that many organizations, UNESCO, Commonwealth of Learning, Caricom are doing to improve the capacity of teachers in the region. What is actually digital education? Dr. Bristol talked about digital education in her initial remarks. For us, digital education is mostly about making education smart. It's about 5 E's. It's enjoyable, leading to high retention and transfer of knowledge, engaging with innovative applications of technologies. It's efficient in terms of providing just-in-time learning and availability of right resources. It's effective, leading to not just learning, but earning for livelihoods and development of responsible citizenship. And fifth is ethical, that to address issues of privacy, cybersecurity, security, and definitely equity for all. So digital education need to be smart and must have these 5 basic elements in all its purpose. In the Commonwealth Digital Education Leadership Program of Commonwealth Learning, we have been talking about digital education as digital literacy plus, which means that digital literacy is necessary, but not good enough to be successful in a digital world. And therefore, knowing how to use a mobile phone is not necessarily sufficient to use a mobile phone for teaching and learning. So digital education is digital literacy plus. And that's how the C-Delta program is designed to focus on the elements of digital education that helps teachers and students to make use of digital education skills. And we go beyond and tell them those who can influence after developing their own skills on digital education, go beyond and influence others by their own practice. They're all digital education leaders. So that's how the digital education leadership training program is organized. And as I said, being implemented in 3 countries. What is important for us, recently we worked with the UNESCO Institute of Information Technology in Education in Moscow to develop a report on smart education strategies for teaching and learning, which we emphasize there that the context matters a lot. And while countries needs policies to be in place in order to make digital education accessible to all and digital education becomes smart education for everyone, context matters. And understanding of that context, that particularly country-specific human capital development issues, issues related to learning loss, technological trends, challenges to cybersecurity and others. The local context is very important in any way looking into the policy developments or implementing education technology in teaching and learning to prepare children for the 21st century. While looking into the policies, we looked at different aspects of what are the areas that needs to be looked at if countries are looking at developing policies, and we are focusing on digital education or smart education as such. So the theme 1 is policy related to infrastructure, ensuring that the infrastructure is available to everyone. The safe use of digital technologies, on a responsible disposal of e-waste, focus on providing technical support, low cost of access to digital platforms. And those are key issues, and how citizens can be provided, students and teachers can be provided with adequate infrastructure, including electricity or alternative energy to use these tools are important. The second theme was curriculum and pedagogy, particularly in the context of datafication of teaching and learning practice, use of artificial intelligence, and how these things can be integrated into the curriculum and teaching and learning practice, so that we prepare lifelong learners who can adapt to the changing needs of the time, and the curriculum needs to focus on those aspects, and integration of technologies into the curriculum, particular in different subjects and disciplines. The third aspect was the digital education resources, where the UNESCO Open Educational Resources Recommendation 2019 plays a big role to create educational content available free of cost and with an open license for everyone, especially for those educational resources created with public funds, and also making available digital platforms or learning management systems accessible to people, to students and teachers equally. The policy next aspect is the skills and competencies, particularly as we are in the fourth industrial revolution. Digital education skills are important, teachers' capacities are important, and especially STEM education for girls. And how do we create opportunity for micro-credential, recognition of micro-credentials? These things are important to look at. The next policy theme is largely related to the to security, the use of technology, funding models, particularly using how do we focus on personal data protection and make people safe. Policies need to be in place on those areas if we want to make use of technologies in teaching and learning effectively. And of course, the last theme is administration and management, particularly the EMIS, Educational Management Information System Management, and looking at quality assurance of digital education, and digitalization of the whole teaching and learning processes that underpins data privacy, that underpins learning and how to use learning analytics ethically, that underpins how do you provide feedback to the learners based on information available on the digital ecosystem, and so on and so forth. All these things covers the 6 strands, and they provide a matrix of activities and implementation mechanisms, how governments and institutions need to look at digital education or smart education policy development as well as implementation. So these are some of the things that we looked at in the policy, and just to sum up some of the key things that we can take forward from what is happening around the world and what is important as a normative practice should be done in the countries, not just in the Caribbean, but as such, but globally, are recognizing the importance of convergence of technologies. The teaching and learning today are getting more and more blended. It's not just face-to-face, not just distance and online learning, but more and more getting blended. And recognizing that a spectrum of teaching and learning modalities available within the framework of lifelong learning of SDG 4 is something important at this stage. And therefore, implementing blended learning within a framework of technology, policy, and capacity becomes more important. This is something that Covenant of Learning proposes to educational institutions around the Commonwealth, that if you want to implement technology-enabled learning, blended learning systematically, you must look at availability of technology or accessibility of technology. You must have appropriate policies that guide your practice, and teachers need to have adequate capacities. That's the 3-pillared framework. Then the backbone of blended strategy is technology-enabled learning that is accessible, that focuses on equity and inclusion. These are the the things that we should not forget about. Building capacities of students, not just of teachers alone, helping students and teachers interact and not get isolated because of technologies, and provide an appropriate mix of both face-to-face and online, both synchronous and asynchronous activities in teaching and learning to look at. Definitely adopt the UNESCO OER recommendation 2019. This is something that should be a matter of priority for countries and institutions to make available knowledge resources accessible to everyone. Then, of course, providing job-ready skills. How do institutions create courses and programs around the jobs that are currently needed? That needs a complete mindset change in our educational institution, community colleges, universities, to develop short courses that helps our young people to get job ready. There are a large number of online courses and programs available. Many countries are already doing such practices to adopt those courses and prepare young people for jobs. And this has become the next important priority for countries and institutions to look at. How do we design micro-credentials that are aligned to national or regional qualification frameworks, competency-based, industry-oriented, they are small, bite-sized. They also look into assessment of prior learning. They are not dependent on one modality, but allows flexibility for learners to have take courses and programs through different modalities, can stack those micro-credentials to gain a higher degree, like from a certificate to a diploma to a degree. And these are quality assured, and the quality assurance of the providers are also taken care of in the micro-credentialing framework. And of course, last but not the least, the investment in digital learning capacities for teachers, students, and policymakers are important in the whole digital education ecosystem. At this stage, I would like to thank you each one, and if there are any questions, comments, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra. This information is absolutely interesting. And of course, for those of us who may have been playing in the landscape for a while, it really forces us to think differently about this notion of digital education, particularly from the point of context. While all of us wants to get there, appreciating the advances that we have already made within the Caribbean around high internet and mobile access, we need to now take greater stock of our context, as you have articulated that, as we think about developing our policies. We do have some questions in the chat, and I'm going to read them from you. So from Nigel Casimir, he's asking, beyond access to meaningful connectivity, one challenge to online schooling in the Caribbean during the pandemic was the availability of appropriate devices to students. And he is saying that he didn't notice any specific mention in your presentation around this. So if you want to comment a little bit further about this.
That's a very good question. And I wanted to be very positive about talking about the situation. The data available shows very positive. The cost of internet was high at many places during the COVID pandemic, and access to many had challenges, particularly in the schools. And that's definitely we must be worried. But it was a challenging situation, and at that time, what was necessary was done. And the result is that we need to reflect and see what is most needed. And as I identified in one of the slides, that while internet connectivity there are more people have internet connectivity, there are still major challenges on internet in the schools. And that's where governments need to focus on. it is extremely important if we want to take everyone along and no one leave behind. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for that. We have another question. These are okay. So we have someone with their hand up, and I'm noticing I'll need the help of our colleagues from UNESCO to give them the ability to speak, because I'm not seeing a question from them. So we have Kamala Anderson, who is participating in this meeting. She has her hand up. And our UNESCO colleagues, can you indicate if you can give her permission to speak?
Morning again. She has been given permission to speak.
Beautiful. So Kamala, the floor is yours. If you unmute your mic so that you can ask your question. And colleagues, I want to direct you to the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If you have any more questions, please post them in the Q&A. So Kamala, over to you.
She lowered her.
Go ahead, Kamala. Kamala, you're muted.
No, I'm saying apologies. The raising of the hand was an error.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much, Kamala. So any other questions that are coming up, colleagues, in relation to Dr. Mishra's presentation, which really forced us to take a different look at this whole notion of digital education. Dr. Mishra, while persons are thinking a little bit and we want to create space for at least one more question from our audience, as you were ending your presentation, you were speaking to the implications for qualifications and being able to think differently about how we make sense of what is a qualification and how we engage and transition to that qualification. And that's on one end of the spectrum. But in engaging with this conversation about micro-credentialing, et cetera, and stacking and badging, et cetera, one of the questions that's coming up in the arena is about assessment and protecting the integrity of assessment. And of course, we have a lot of persons who are not necessarily wanting to go in that direction because they don't feel that they can protect that integrity of assessment. In this landscape of digital technology and digital education, not digital technology, but digital education, what kind of advice would you want to give to practitioners, some of whom are in this space here with us, about how they can allay some of their fears around protecting the integrity of assessment practices, or even increasing our competency for authentic assessment in the landscape using technology?
Thank you, Dr. Bristol. I think you raised a very important point about authentic assessment, and that's what I picked out. The question had the answer inbuilt into it. But I will go a little back to emphasize on what's happening. The current scenario of the digital education that become more acceptable during the pandemic raised this issue of assessment that we have been doing traditionally on a pen and paper test, which we always believed that that's the only way of doing assessment of student learning. And we never questioned ourselves to whether that assessment is the right way of doing assessment. However, educational literature researchers for several years have been talking about the inadequacy of the pen and paper test, that we do a 2-hour test or the 3-hour test at the end of a semester or a year. And we never took cognizance of those things. And we are too much of practice oriented, and we are living in a comfortable world to see that's the best way, and we attribute that something that, oh, this is more integrity if we do it face to face. But important today also, there were also issues related to delinking degrees to jobs for several years. Why? Because what is taught in the classroom are not necessarily those things that are needed in the industry for people. So if you look into those things, the academia has become a broader framework for preparing citizens who are able to question things. But after all their generic training, they do different things in the different walks of life. What is important today is to think education from the point of view of job-related scenarios and prepare them. And if you are looking into those scenarios to create micro-credentials and create badging which are appropriate to their jobs, assessment also need to change and provide authentic assessment which really help them to do things on job, and not just a paper degree which is tested on face-to-face, pen and paper test. So there are lots of alternative ways. And I have been watching several universities in the developed world who have already been using authentic assessment in online learning scenarios. So if these are not new, there are lots of things available. There are lots of courses available now on authentic assessment. What is important? There are two important things, rather three important things on that aspect. It's a long answer, but I'll stop with this 3 points. One is that there is a need for change in mindset of academia. Two, there is a need for interaction with the real world problems, whether we call it industry or whatever. And the three is that institutional policies need to change to accommodate new thinking, new innovative thinking, on not to create examination policies which are too rigid and doesn't allow teachers to innovate authentic assessment. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We do have another question, so I'll ask you to answer it in 30 seconds or less so that we can transition to the other panelists that we have here. I mean, I know that we could keep talking about this topic for a long, long time. So the question that is coming to you from Valerie Allen Odell is: assessing mobile subscription per population may not be applicable for large landmass countries like Guyana and Belize, appreciating the vast hinterlands and inaccessible areas. So therefore, in a case like that, what other measures are available to policymakers to make that assessment?
I think this is very important question in the point of view of these two countries, especially have very low internet penetration and mobile penetration in comparison to number of countries that I have been following in the Caribbean. It's important that we increase, the governments need to focus on increasing access to internet in these countries, to remote areas as well. There are new technologies available which will help the government to increase access to internet. That's the important ways of looking at things. Other than that, there is also it is important to look at offline technologies to build digital capacities locally in remote areas. But looking at, there are also trends that where people are now talking that internet is human rights. Okay, and therefore it is imperative for the governments to think about how to provide internet access using newer technologies and better technologies in the remote areas of the country. But there are ways and means to look at other ways around into building digital competencies and capacities using offline tools and technologies. And policymakers can think about a blended approach in using different online, offline technologies.
Thank you for that, Professor Mishra. One of the things that I really enjoyed this engagement with you and really enjoyed this conversation with you. I don't know if our colleagues in the webinar have access to their reactions, but I can imagine that you'd be receiving a number of thumbs ups, a number of a great deal of applause for really starting us off thinking about this topic in not just a descriptive manner in terms of telling us what exists, but really forcing us to analyze what we have come to know about how we have to navigate this world. So on behalf of the Digital Skills Task Force, co-conveners, the Caricom Secretariat and UNESCO Kingston office, we do want to express our appreciation to you for taking the time to be here with us. And with that, I move over to my colleague Hector, who will introduce the first of our panelists in the next segment that we are engaging in. And our panelists in this next segment will have approximately 7 minutes. So they're about, not more, to make their presentation. So Mr. Hector, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bristol. And I also lend you my praise to our last speaker. We will now be hearing from Mrs. Dawn Reed. She is an educational services planner in the government of Anguilla. Mrs. Dawn Reed is actually a pioneer in the area of technology and education with something over 25 years of experience. So she has really been one of those early adopters. She, of course, holds degrees and tremendous amount of experience teaching at a number of levels within the education sector. One of the things that she has been strongly advocating for is educational management and information systems. She sees these as being key to not only enhancing the functioning and efficiency of the education system, but also in providing resilience within the education sector, particularly as it relates to helping the education system to bounce back from disasters, such as in the case of the COVID pandemic. Over to you, Mrs. Reed. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will just share my screen. Let me first begin by saying thank you to UNESCO Kingston and the Caricom for affording me this opportunity to share a little bit of our story in Anguilla in terms of our approach to unlocking the potential of every mind by leveraging digital skills. Quite frankly, I believe that the digital skills are vital to survival in today's world. Seems my computer is not responding.
Dawn, can you do, right, good. And can you use your up and down arrows? That might help rather than trying to use your cursor. So you might need to do a right click on your screen with your cursor to get out there, or left click, right? And use your up and down arrows.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is a presentation outline. So basically, in terms of the context, Anguilla is a very small island developing state with challenges and limitations due to our context. But from very early on, as early as possibly 1997, 98, we realized the significance of the integration of technology into the education sector and the teaching and learning process in order to place our students on a level playing field with the rest of the world, such that it became policy that all students at secondary level had to be exposed to information technology. This has continued to present time. And one of our most recent accomplishments, of which we're quite proud, is Project Inspire. This project entails the provision of laptops to all students and teachers and the inclusion of smart boards in classrooms. So we began with one pilot school, and the intention is to now roll out to all of the public primary schools. Our current education development plan, EDP 2020 to 2025, also speaks to the highlights, the emphasis that is being placed on leveraging digital skills and unlocking the potential of every mind. If we look at priority number 1, addressing the changing needs of students and student engagement, and priority number 2, embracing and optimizing technology and technological advances. What has been missing, however, has been a coordinated approach and a system that will enable school management and central administration to benefit from an environment that optimizes the use of the technology and to function in an environment that is equivalent to one that we are preparing our students for. I mean, it's interesting. How can we teach students about digital skills when we ourselves did not model what we were teaching, not provide the example or the environment? The significance of this came home to us immediately after Hurricane Irma, when about 90% of our infrastructure was damaged. And in this picture here, that central picture is what our IT lab looked like after Hurricane Irma. So both Hurricane Irma and the COVID-19 exposed the vulnerabilities of our education system. It exposed the fact that in the blink of an eye, huge investments in education infrastructure, including ICT, can be lost. Hence the need for building resilience within our education system. And that is the ability of the system to bounce back in the event of a disaster and to resume the teaching and learning process. It is actually said that the measure of a country's resilience is the speed at which its education system actually bounces back following a disaster. And our solution is the use of an education management information system and an accompanying learning management system. The development of the Angular Education Management Information System, as we call it ACTA EMIS, was made possible through the ResMed program. At first, we thought we did not qualify in terms of, we usually think of resilience, but then we realized that by developing an EMIS and having the accompanying learning management system, that we were in fact building resilience into the system, in addition to improving the monitoring and management of the system, while ensuring the effective transfer of knowledge in relation to digital skills. So the EMIS and the accompanying LMS basically represented that missing piece of the puzzle towards digital transformation. ResMed, and that stands for Resilient, Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity. This program commenced operations in January 2019. So currently, this program, as of February 1st, 2023, there are 19 resilience projects, 12 sustainable energy projects, and 17 marine biodiversity projects across the OCT countries in the region. The objectives of ResMed is to support sustainable human development efforts of participating countries in the primary priority focus areas, as I mentioned, resilience, sustainable energy, and marine biodiversity. The economies of the OCTs, in keeping with many small island developing states, are disproportionately reliant on tourism and imported fossil fuels, and are highly exposed to extreme weather events, particularly tropical cyclones. This economic model and particular confluence of factors render OCTs highly vulnerable economically, financially, and environmentally. So we are indeed very grateful for the opportunity that has been afforded to us to address some of our challenges. The Anguilla EMIS project directly speaks to building resilience in the Anguilla education sector. In Anguilla, with an emphasis on using technology and the digital skills to create that underlying platform on which all other innovations within education, digital innovations, can sit. It provides for a coordinated approach in relation to the teaching and learning of digital skills while ensuring effective monitoring and management, and that the necessary data and information is accessible and used for informed decision-making across the sector. The underlying philosophy of this project is that learning gains and investment should not be lost due to a disaster, and that we need to build redundancies and contingency plans within our education systems. This is one aspect of being efficient.
My apologies, Ms. Reed, but you're way over your allotted time, so we're going to have to ask you to wrap up now.
Okay, so I'll quickly go over to the overview of the project. So we're now working, as I mentioned, to implement this missing piece of the puzzle. And what we have is a customized solution, not only because education systems are different, but because we're building an additional layer to what would be a typical EMIS, one that allows for better monitoring and management at national level and also builds resilience into the system. So the component parts of the project are the development of an EMIS, an accompanying LMS, and the development of a contingency plan. It is sort of a business continuity plan in the event of a disaster. Progress to date, we launched on December 1st, 2022. Thus far, we have worked on the implementation plan, the software plan, and we're now looking at the other components, hardware, the platforms. But the intention is for us to roll out in September 2023. There are many benefits to this project, many and varied at the various levels of the system. Of course, resilience would be at the top of the pile as expected, but it also provides for so many other areas at management, policy level, in terms of the additional data would allow for additional opportunities for research, better informed, data-driven decision-making, better record keeping. At an individual level, you would have student access, parent access. They're able to track progress, interface with teachers, even when physical access is not possible. And of course, through it all, the intention is to have an enhanced teaching and learning experience, and of course, mastery of the digital skills through greater exposure. Basically, the EMIS should allow us to greatly enhance our contributions to national, regional, and international global developmental agendas as we're better able to contribute. And as I mentioned, as small island developing states, this means that we're better equipped to respond to changing needs as it relates to education, thereby unlocking the potential of every mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Reed. And of course, my apologies for having to disrupt you, but we do have to manage our time effectively because we have limited time. Thank you so much. I will now hand over to my colleague again, Dr. Hector, who will introduce our next speaker. Dr. Hector, over to you. Colleagues, reminding you, please use your Q&A to put in any questions you may have when we reach to that point. Dr. Hector?
Thank you very much, Dr. Bristol. I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. A.G. Hamilton Taylor. He is the director and also the founder of the Web Animation, Visualization, and E-Learning Laboratory at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. This lab, the WAVE Lab, it facilitates education and research in the design and evaluation of 3D computing, cinematography, animation, user interface and user experience design, e-learning, cultural computing, and interactive media games for positive upliftment. Dr. Hamilton Taylor, he's also been a consultant for various firms in Silicon Valley and also with the United Nations in Jamaica. He's also a Fulbright scholar, and he has been doing pioneering work, establishing both bachelor's and graduate programs at the University of the West Indies. Dr. Hamilton Taylor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks. Greetings to everyone. Thank you, and to the previous speakers. Yes, very interesting discussions. Let me know if you can see my screen here, folks.
We can see your screen, Dr. Hamilton Taylor.
Okay, good. And it's still there?
It's still there.
Okay. So, so we started in the mid-1990s introducing interactive computing at UA Mona. And in the early 2000s, I did some research at Georgia Tech and UG in building animation systems and evaluating them for educational use. Returning, we then introduced a number of courses. One was Computers and Society, basically with the aim of trying to see how we could introduce students to interactive graphical computing and to have them use it not only for self-expression and sort of a simulation and scientific work, but that we would not only be teaching them, they would be creating, how can we sort of unleash all this the cultural potential. And some of the early work we did here, you see an example of a project, Nancy, final year capstone project done by our 3 students here, Shackelford et al. Well, what we found out is that we needed a space to actually carry out this work. We were outgrowing, doing projects in my office. The regular computer labs didn't have the facilities, they didn't have the space. We were using speakers and, there was sound and so forth. There was no space to discuss and work on things. So we were awarded a Principal's New Initiative grant to set up the WAVE Lab, which is Web Animation, Visualization, and E-Learning. And as a result, then we had a space now where students could this is my Computers and Society course, just to give you an idea of the scale, where we have about 500 students per year coming through in small groups and presenting their work and working and discussing their work in this small, this small space. But to give you an idea of what this looks like, I want to show you a very brief excerpt from a couple of first year projects.
No, once upon a time he was a happy world calf named Rollington Calvert.
Rollington Calvert?
I don't know what I'm going to do with this boy now. I don't know what I'm going to do with this boy. My friends have stressed me out.
Yes, Mama. Come inside. Why, Mama? Remember, the danger of the night, not to mention Farmer McDuffie.
So, so this is a take on, a traditional story. They've added some modern elements, and we want to see how they could use these mediums to sort of bring all these Caribbean traditions, give them new life, and put them into the new age where they were tending to be looking at media from outside of the region and spending less time with their parents and grandparents and so on, learning about their own traditions. So to encourage them to bring things in. Another type of work we encouraged was for them to document their own experiences. So here is one on St. Vincent.
Them saying, yeah, cause the volcano come on Europe again. We was on.
Right. We have a slightly wrong clip here, or parts of the clip.
Water went. When the volcano actually had started to calm down and water went, no, that was horrible.
And I had to go to work that week to Anna. Boy, never again. And to believe the volcano's still not dormant. If the volcano goes off again, we're not staying there, no matter what.
Facts.
Right. So here we go. And you know, this was actually done, you know, by a student from who experienced the volcano, and she's recreating discussion across 3 generations about it and her experience and so forth. So just to give you a bit of you know, the live feel of what this means. So we've also so you know, this work then goes from where we introduce large number of students at first year from across the Caribbean to the medium. We give them a space they could work in, and then they have the opportunity at final year to do more detailed work with virtual reality and augmented reality and so on in the space. And at the graduate level work, where they're actually able to now create systems and do formal research to evaluate the effectiveness of these things. And furthermore, we looked at, we've also now experimented with 3D cinematography, and this was one of my research projects here, where we went to Ethiopia and actually filmed the traditions in Ethiopia in 3D and created a documentary, and then students could actually sort of get a virtual experience, and not just students, I mean the public. Here we had a screening for actually Prince Ermias of Ethiopia himself, the grandson of Emperor Haile Selassie. But no, in terms of the challenges that we've had, one of the things we found is that the lab is small, we have limited equipment and so forth. It's a useful space, but the majority of the challenges is really on human resource aspect, because we've had to train a set of tutors, and some of our graduate students have come back on as panelists to assess and interact with students and mentor them. So we found that, you know, not everyone, for example, who takes an art class or a music class is going to turn out to be an artist or a teacher. And the same thing sort of applies with introducing this. So it's important to introduce everyone so they try art, they try music, they try, you know, poetry and writing. But, you know, it takes a lot of determination. It takes a lot of time. So students may be happy to watch animations, to play games and so on. But, you know, often we assume that because they're using these devices, they're going to automatically be good creators. But it is very important to introduce them and to get further support. The university, we spend hundreds of hours. If I have a class of 200, as I have this semester in first year Compound Society, that works out to be about 50 groups of students. And we have to have them present their ideas and their drafts on paper first and then draft animations and finals. It takes hundreds of hours for that process over the point of the semester. And that's not really accounted for in how hours are counted by our institution. So if we want this sort of work to expand and continue, we have to realize it's going to take a lot of HR as well as the equipment and of course, you know, to do this also in blended modes, which we had to do in the pandemic. So I suspect my time is
Yes, Dr. Hamilton, your time is up. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And maybe we go to our next speaker. I will remind our participants to put your questions in the Q&A because we are creating space for that conversation with our panelists towards the end. So we have our last speaker now. So Dr. Hector, over to you. You're muted.
Yes. Thank you very much for that, and thank you, Dr. Hamilton Taylor. I'm very pleased to introduce our final speaker, who will be intervening in the format of a discussant, sharing and reflecting on some of the ideas which we've heard before. And to this, we have none other than Ms. Viviana Rosseth. She is an independent digital skills consultant with over 12 years of experience in education, training delivery, policy research. She's worked with a number of multilateral organizations, including the World Bank and UNESCO. Her work has included engagements with governments in over 20 countries, focusing on the use of qualitative and quantitative data to inform the developments of national education training systems. Currently, Ms. Rosette is the lead researcher for a digital skills pillar of the World Bank's Digital Economy Assessment of Jamaica. She holds a master's degree in international affairs and also a certificate in data science. Ms. Rosette, over to you.
I cannot share my video for some reason. Could you enable me, please? Or can anybody enable me to share my video? Unless you don't want to see my face, which is fine too. It says that the host has stopped me from sharing my video.
Okay, I'll ask our back office our LAN manager to activate this. But okay, perhaps in the meantime, maybe you can start
yes,
while she does that. Thank you.
For sure. So good afternoon, everybody. I want to commend the effort of Caricom to create this digital skills task force and to offer a space for different stakeholders across the Caribbean to talk and learn about these issues, which are more and more prevalent, more and more important in our societies and economies. So it was very interesting for me to hear the experiences that the panelists shared. And my comments are gonna be around two main areas. One has to do with policy and the other one has to do with the delivery of education and training for the development of digital skills. So around policy, there are three issues that I wanted to highlight. And I have to say, as you mentioned earlier, that most of my experience is in Jamaica. So I'm hoping that sharing these thoughts could be useful for other countries, but I by no means mean to assume that everybody in the Caribbean suffers from the same or has the same dynamics that that I have observed in Jamaica. So the first thing that I want to raise is the importance of the definition of digital skills. I think it's very crucial, and we have been talking about digital skills for a while now, but I think that in some cases there is this kind of lack of understanding of what it is that digital skills are. And for this,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You should now be able to access the video. Thank you.
Okay, here I am. Hi, everybody. That's my face. Okay, thank you. So a common understanding of what digital skills are, I think, is essential for the development of policies, either nationally or regionally. And what I have heard in multiple interventions and also past conferences by Caricom is that there is this idea that it is kind of in two extremes. So some people talk about digital skills and they talk about the ability that many people have to use content through their phones, and that is assumed to be a digital skill, which it is. And some other people jump from that to programming as another type of digital skills. But I think there is a lot of territory lost in the middle. Managing Word is a digital skills. Being able to do presentations, to do Zooms is part of digital skills. And actually UNESCO has a very comprehensive and very specific framework for understanding digital skills, not only what types of things, what types of categories of digital skills you can have, but also different levels. And I think that it is important for us to revert to that, to review those definitions and kind of refine the conversation around digital skills, because the dynamics for the development of basic digital skills is not the same as the dynamic for the development of programming digital skills or other advanced or highly specialized digital skills. So that definition and that understanding that we're talking about a range of competencies at different levels of competence is really crucial for us to move the conversation forward in a more granular and informed way. So that's one aspect that I wanted to highlight when it comes to policy. The second one is the importance of the development of national strategies for coordination, national strategies for the development of digital skills. So what happens in Jamaica is that it is a vibrant system when it comes to digital skills. Many ministries are involved in it, many private institutions, many universities, foundations put programs here and there. And this is all certainly very positive, because we all understand that digital skills are crucial and are fundamental for Jamaica, at least, to transition into that knowledge economy. The issue there is that we start shooting in different directions or doing the same thing. So having a strategy for digital skills that convenes everybody together, gives everybody a responsibility, shares information among all stakeholders of what is happening, I think is going to help at least Jamaica and maybe other countries to move forward in a more efficient way and in a more coordinated and organized way. That's the second point around policy. The third point about policy that I wanted to highlight is the importance of robust systems for the recognition of prior learning. This is especially important for digital skills because, as we all know, there are multiple avenues to develop digital skills that do not necessarily have to go through the formal education system. So there is informal learning, MOOCs, you kind of trying to learn from the computer, and also these rapid skilling courses. There's all sorts of possibilities for people to develop digital skills. The question is, how can they certify that knowledge? How can they convey or show an employer that they do have that knowledge and that they have been trying to capture or gather through their own means that are not necessarily in the formal education system? So a system for the recognition of prior learning could help students and the workforce to have assessments that are valid, that are formally recognized, and that can be then used by them to show employers the skills that they have. So in sum, around policy, I have 3 points. The first one, the importance of being very clear with our definitions and understanding of digital skills. The second one, the importance of having a coordinated vision and strategy for digital skills development in terms of policy. And the third one, the development of a robust system for the recognition of prior learning. Now, moving on to delivery. And by delivery, I mean what the education system, the formal education system, is doing to develop digital skills. So here again, we go back to this idea of the differences in levels of digital skills. So we have a system that develops basic digital skills and another system that develops intermediate or advanced digital skills. So let's start with the basic. And by here, I'm talking about the formal education system in primary and secondary schooling. And at least the government of Jamaica has done several things to try to foster the development of digital skills in the basic education system. One of them has been the integration of ICT as a pedagogical tool and the integration of ICT in the delivery of education, which is good international practice, but at the same time, it hasn't been evaluated. So it is hard to know to what extent ICT has been effectively integrated into the classroom. It is hard to know to what extent it is being done, what is the quality of that instruction using ICT means. So it is important to know those details to see how to move forward with that policy. The second one is related to the integration of ICT in education delivery, and it is teacher training. So this path chosen, at least by Jamaica, to embed ICT in the teaching profession means that pretty much every teacher has to receive training on how to incorporate ICT in education. And it has been an important source of focus and investment by the government of Jamaica. But still, many years after this became a priority, there are two problems. The first one, lack of teacher capacity is one of the main obstacles among, is the opinion of many stakeholders that lack of teacher capacity is one of the main obstacles to develop digital skills in Jamaica. And the second problem is that, well, this has not been evaluated either. So we do not know to what extent, I mean, how many trainings have been done, or what do the trainings consist of, or what are the assessments of those trainings? What is the support that teachers get to implement the new techniques in the classroom? So there's another big question there about how is this teacher training going? The third point, with regards to basic education, and it was raised by several of our panelists, is the lack of connectivity and access to devices. And this is, again, another area in which many countries have spent a great deal of effort and financial resources, but still is considered one of the main obstacles for the development of digital skills. So there are many questions there, and to me, the devil is in the details. So yes, there's sometimes distribution of devices, but anecdotal evidence that I gathered through my conversations with informants say that, well, the devices wouldn't work. They wouldn't turn on. They didn't have enough capacity to kind of support the educational activities that they needed to do to engage in. So, and the same with connectivity. There have been many projects to try to connect different schools and different rural
Ms.
areas.
Rosette, my apologies for disrupting you, but you are way over your allotted time, so I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up in the next minute.
Okay, sure. So, okay, so what can I say here in the next minute? Well, I'm going to turn then to the delivery of short-term courses, which is a way to reskill population, reskill workers and also youth. And I have to say that there are numerous initiatives to develop digital skills through these short-term courses, but there are several things that concern me. The first one is quality assurance of the content that is being delivered. The second one is the formal certification of the students that go through these courses. And in many cases, this is not clear. So students can go through these short-term courses without knowing whether their certification is going to be nationally recognized. Another thing that I wanted to raise is online learning. And I think there are two things that I wanted to highlight here, and with this I will
finish. If you
finish.
can do it very quickly, thank you.
Yes, with this I will finish. The first thing that I wanted to highlight is to what extent do we know that online learning does work to develop other skills? The US has done many studies saying that it actually only works for people who do well in school. So I think information on how online learning worked during the pandemic for Jamaica and many Caribbean countries would be important. The last point is about MOOCs. MOOCs, the completion rate of MOOCs is between 5 and 15%. And it's actually much better for people who already have intermediate or advanced skills. So to me, the idea that MOOCs can kind of cover everybody who would need to develop digital skills is a big question mark.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rosette. Appreciate it. Colleagues, I know, again, if you had access to your reactions, you would applaud our members of the panel, Ms. Dawn Reed, Dr. A.G. Hamilton-Taylor, and of course, our discussant, Ms. Viviana Rosette. We are at a point now where we take a few minutes because we are almost out of time for this session, but we want to create the space, however, take a few minutes to field some questions. So I'm going to read the questions that are coming up in the chat, and I am going to ask our panelists to be very, very precise. I know this thing is that we are very passionate about it and there's a lot of information to be shared. However, I'm going to have to ask you to be precise in your responses. The first question coming in for us, and this is for Ms. Dawn Reed. Ms. Reed, the question is, how do you hope to roll out the proposed EMIS and who will be responsible for the initial stage? What groundwork is being done to begin the process towards the rollout? Ms. Reed?
Thank you, Dr. Bristol. There is a project steering committee that manages the project and who is working closely with the software developers. There are various points at which we would engage with stakeholders, for example, at our launch, during testing of the acceptance environment, during the collection of inventory at the various schools, and of course, at the final stages when they will be training for all of the schools towards the rollout. So it's in stages as outlined in our implementation plan when we would engage with the stakeholders, but they would be integral to the whole process, to the rollout.
Thank you for that, Ms. Reed. Next question is for Dr. Taylor. So Dr. Taylor, this question coming to you is, how do we strategize as a region on how to introduce Animation Plus into the education curriculum? Maybe just highlight 3 things that we could choose to do, or 3 things, if so much, that we need to be paying attention to. Dr. Hamilton-Taylor.
Well, I think the first one is to try to guide the use of animation towards sort of positive and uplifting things. And based on what students may be seeing across the world, then, you know, so there's almost, we do almost sort of like a, what would you call it now? A lot of the time is spent when students come in with ideas to discuss and say, well, yes, what is, you know, is this, how do you find this? Is this appropriate? Is this culturally that? They have a lot of sometimes misconceptions even about their own culture because, you know, for the same reason we're trying to solve the issue, they've spent their time, you know, looking at TikTok and YouTube and so on, and less time with their, you know, parents, grandparents, and so forth. That's one. And that goes up now, which to the source of the level of the teachers. And so in many cases, then at the level of the teachers, you also need that exposure because they grew up mostly probably in the, you know, the 1990s, early 2000s. And so there's both that's, you know, sort of aesthetic aspect as well as the technical aspect. And a lot of it, I think, has focused, you know, the efforts, maybe a little more on the technical and graphical side. And I think it's really important then to try and see then and what, you know, how do we want this to sort of influence? I mean, there are a lot of, because left on their own, sometimes we all, you know, we find persons may be focusing on just, you know, problems. in the various societies. And one of the things I've tried to emphasize, and I think is probably important, is that if you talk about a problem, we also want you to envision the solutions or to look at positive and, so that are also happening. So that's one to that covers. Yes.
All right. Thank you. I think our last question coming through again, and this will have to be our last question, is for you again, Dr. Taylor, and it raises the whole questions of the questionnaire equity. How do we digitalize all when there's a challenge with equipping all? Yeah, and I think all our panelists spoke about that. Is there affordable access? You were teaching 500 plus students in groups of however many, and there's some serious equity issues around that, of course. And in terms of, is there affordable access for the animation program for youths? And the question is the Rastafari community included? And of course, we appreciate that our Rastafarian community members do not necessarily operate at the center. Yeah, so if you can just give us a quick shot at the question of the challenge of equipping all and ensuring that we are also inclusive and equitable as we do so.
Yeah, that is a major problem. I think in the Caribbean, we can become a little more creative in our approach to how to get, more access to equipment. This would include, I think, the use of use properly. We don't want e-waste, which is actually right. So. But I think with some thought, we have had to operate on a lot, basically shoestring budgets. I mean, currently, for example, our lab got initial funding, we got one thing, but there is no recurring annual thing. So, one can get a bit creative. And in terms of the connectivity aspects, which was certainly a major aspect in the problem in the pandemic. I think at the level of both governments and institutions, that they need to have more interaction with the providers to make this. I know during that we proposed that there should be sort of data-free access for students for things related to their courses. That was done on a limited scale in Jamaica, but that needs, I think they're solvable. I mean, and on the issue of the Rastafari and Pan-African community, again, I think with a little more, sort of thought and organization, some of those issues can be included, as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. Colleagues.
But it is a major, it's not going to be an easy problem.
It's not. I appreciate that. And I'm sure that all of us, we appreciate that this challenge that we are engaging in right now around digital education is not an easy resolve. It's not an easy solution challenge. We have heard today presentations, colleagues, that speak to the need for increased coordination to ensure efficiency and reduce areas of redundancy. We have heard presentations today that causes us to think differently about how we create learning content, and of course the importance of working with the media, and then the implication of that is distributing that local content so that we can monetize it and create incentives for engaging in this kind of work. And of course the very real challenge that we have around resourcing, not just financially, but also human resources. So we have been given quite a bit to think about today in this first webinar. I want to remind, before I hand over to my colleague who's to do the vote of thanks, that this is the first of 3 webinars that we are engaging in. And the second webinar is scheduled for April 2023. It's going to look at business designing future-ready business ecosystems. So today we looked at education, unlocking the potential of every mind. And our second one will look at business designing future-ready ecosystems. That was scheduled for April. So keep your eyes out. We'll send the notifications on that. The next one coming up is going to be in May. And that's going to focus on inclusion. So some of these issues that we talked about today is going to come up again, leveraging digital for Caribbean prosperity. Thank you, everyone, on my behalf and on behalf of my colleagues for participating and for your questions. And now I hand over to my colleague, Ms. Jennifer Britton. Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you, Laurette. I'm unfortunately in a place where I can't put on my video, but the picture's a good representation. I wanted to thank, because you are leaving, Laurette, thank you for an excellent job moderating today. And most importantly, our speakers, esteemed speakers, Dr. Mishra, Mrs. Reed, Dr. Hamilton Taylor, and Ms. Rosette for their obviously intense research and preparation to deliver a lot of critical material to us in a short space of time. I am speaking on behalf of the co-chairs of the Digital Skills Task Force because unfortunately they both needed to leave, but I'm sure that they too wanted to add their thanks to the speakers and the moderator for providing such a rich bed of information. We started at the global level and looked at a strategic framework and then had two very local living examples with regard to tools being used and also the opportunities and the spread of the career pathways, I think, as we look at digital skills in Caricom. The Caricom Digital Skills Task Force ends its work in June, but in the course of the year that they've been working, year and a half, we did have some very intense consultations last August, and those consultations are sort of validated today in some of the things we heard in the webinars, and we continue to open up spaces to seek, receive, and interact with the information on this exciting subject of digital skills for Caricom colleagues. All of this, as you know, does not take the work of one person, and we did have a small team from the task force, Dr. Hector, Ms. Simone, Joseph Oliveira, and Winona Lawrence, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to get us the delivery point today. And I wish to thank them openly as well. The UNESCO teams supporting us on the platform, the Caricom Secretariat team supporting us as well in-house at work, and all of you participants who took the time to spend this 1.5 hours with us. Obviously, we have enough material that could have probably filled 3 hours, so we may push the envelope a little bit for the next 2 webinars and go for a 2-hour delivery and see how it works. We thank the 100 of you who stayed with us, stayed the whole course, and ask that you continue to look out for the other 2 webinars as Dr. Bristol has pointed us to. But more importantly, we may open up a space on both the UNESCO and Caricom websites for more of your questions and thoughts and comments as the task force begins to prepare its final report. So please look for that space as well and continue to support us. And to the esteemed speakers again, please know that this is not your last interaction with the task force. We will certainly be reaching back out to get some more information and more hard work from you. As you know, the only reward for good work, for hard work, is more work. So we will be reaching out to you unashamedly to get some more of your insight as we work on the final report. Again, I say thank you. And if I've forgotten to thank anyone, it is purely my mistake, and I will make up for it via email. But thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the afternoon. We look forward to you joining us in April and May for the other 2 webinars where we deepen the discussion started today as we look at how to roll out business and how to make it truly equitable and inclusive as we look across some specific sectors in those 2 webinars. So thank you again, everyone. And I'll hand you back to Master Control. Paul, anything else from you?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I think you said it all. Again, I endorse everything that you have said. And again, I also encourage everyone to look out for the upcoming 2 more webinars in this series. Thank you all for being here, sharing with us your questions, and look forward to continued fruitful collaboration as we look towards leveraging digital skills for Caribbean prosperity. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul. I think the only last thing that we forgot is that we'll be posting the recording on both the Caricom site and UNESCO. We're still going to be in discussion with the presenters as to whether we can use their material. And if it is possible, we'll also post those on our websites. Thank you ever so much, everyone. Take good care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. Yeah.